Well, hello, and welcome back to Curless Mania. We have a very special episode for you tonight. I have a very special guest with me, Davey Cretin. How are you doing, Davey?
Fine. Thank you for having me, Tom.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. Davey has been, you've probably seen him on many channels. He's been on Bicycle Legs, I believe, talking about Rush.
Yes.
He has been, he has his own channel called Cretin Classics, which you need to check out.
Thank you.
He did a Cars ranking recently that I thought was awesome. I mean, I love the Cars too, so I was engrossed. And I love that you put Panorama pretty high. That was great. Um,
Underrated album.
Totally underrated. It's like their art rock album. I love it.
Yes.
Um, and I'm trying to think what else you also you weren't I
I
think
was
you
on
were
I've been
sorry, go
on
ahead.
Jack Toledano's channel,
That's
All or
it.
Nada, according to Jack.
All or Nada. Yep. Yep. Which is
I've
great.
done some stuff with him.
He's been on Sea of Tranquility as well, right?
Yeah, he's old college buddies with Pete Pardo.
Got it. Got it. He seems like a
And I've
great
done
guy too.
He is. And I've done a bunch of videos on a channel out of Buffalo, New York, upstate from me, where I am in the city, called Rock Show Critique. I've done a lot of stuff with those guys. So we've ranked albums, songs, stuff like that. And then I have my own channel, as you said, Cretin Classics,
Very
which
cool. Very
it doesn't have much content now, but I'm adding stuff.
I'm in the same boat, Davey. I'm like I don't have tons of videos, but I'm working on it. And
But
this will be another one, right?
yeah, you do have these cool album battles, which I really like.
Yeah, that's kind of been the theme that's emerged on my channel is that people seem to like it, so I'm going to continue doing it. And this one is going to be epic. Here's another epic one for you, Davey. But before we get into that, I want to say that Davey also worked in record stores for like 3 decades in
Yes.
Queens and Long Island, and also was in a Ramones cover band, right?
Tribute band, we used to say.
Tribute band, sorry, tribute band. Which is pretty cool, and I think that's where your name sort of stems from as your stage name, right?
Yes.
So that's pretty cool. Cretin Hop,
Blitzkrieg
absolutely.
Bop, all those songs. Did them
Yeah,
for a decade plus. It was
yeah,
great
very
fun.
cool.
Played around the tri-state area. I'm going to do more video. I'm going to do videos about my time in the band on my channel eventually. One of the
Very,
myriad things I have booked that I want to do eventually.
it's awesome. That's awesome, man. Now, so I mean, Davey has earned his stripes in the music world, man. He is just
Thanks.
he's got cred. So what can I say? So anyway, so we have an epic battle tonight. Styx, what I call epic Styx. And come on. And when I was telling people that I was going to do a Styx album battle, I told some friends, some music buddies, and I said, "Well, we're going to do a Styx battle. What do you think it's going to be?" And all of them right away were like, "Grand Illusion, Pieces of Eight." And I was like, "Yep, that's correct." So it's interesting that most people go right to that. So I think it's kind of well known that these are really sort of their twin tower records, in my opinion.
I
Uh,
agree.
this is sort of like the pinnacle. We're going to talk a lot about these albums, but this is sort of the pinnacle of their cooperation between Dennis, Tommy, and JY. That created this awesome 2 record, run. Um, they did some good stuff after this, but these 2 albums were amazing, and I think it's going to be tough to pick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick history of Styx, writing, all the way up to because they have a long history. Trying to, I'm going to do a quick, encapsulation of the band running up to Grand Illusion. So and Davey, feel free to jump in at any time.
Okay.
Um, but I'm going to say that Styx, obviously known as sort of an American prog band, theatrical, but have pop hooks, heavy riffing, a lot of synthesizer. But man, were they critics just hated this band. I mean, they just got lambasted. I mean, they just never got any good reviews. So I always call Styx the ultimate people's band. It was like they were still very popular and still sold lots of records, you know?
They sort of took over where Grand Funk left off, another band that was reviled by critics. critics hated Grand Funk. And then towards the mid 70s, they petered out and broke up. And then Styx took over, getting all the critics' ire. I think it was Pieces of Eight where one of the critics actually said, this album is like a parking lot full of whale vomit. I mean, who even comes up with that stuff?
Ouch.
Where do you get that phrase? But yeah, but the fans loved them. They sold millions of albums and they had sellout tours and they toured all over. And as the 70s wore on, they became more popular.
Yeah, and they were great live. They were a great live band too. And I think that helped them too. I mean, so basically South Side of Chicago, right? Dennis DeYoung met the Panazzo brothers, and then JY joined soon after. Um, then they had a fifth member, John
Cyrilewski.
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 And so that kind of was the first lineup of Styx. They did 4 records on an indie label called Wooden Nickel, and Styx 1, 2, and Serpent is Rising and Man of Miracles.
Yes.
And so 2 years after the Styx 2 was released, a song from that album called Lady became this huge radio hit. I guess some DJ in Chicago or something said, I'm going to make this a hit.
He said, I'm going to play it once an hour until it becomes a big hit. And eventually it did.
How cool is that?
Very cool. They got lucky.
Well, yeah, I got lucky. Absolutely. So they get signed from the momentum from that, they get signed to A&M Records, and they make their first A&M album called Equinox, which I think is excellent. Really good record.
Very proggy, very progressive rock.
Yeah, yeah, and it has the Ice on Fire on the cover. It's like you feel the prog vibes all over the place on that album.
Indeed.
And the Sweet Madam Blue. We're not here to talk about that album. So then soon after, John leaves the band right after Equinox, and they have to find someone for the tour, and they hire an unknown guy, Tommy Shaw. And apparently a road manager or something said you need to meet this guy Tommy, and he joined in for the tour. And I guess his audition was you have to hit the high notes for Lady.
Precisely.
Yeah, so you have to have a high voice because like John had a majorly high voice.
Yeah, he does all the super high harmonies, even higher than JY on the early Wooden Nickel records.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? I mean, like, what is it, Born for Adventure, where he's like really high, super high? It's crazy. Anyway, so we're this happens on this channel. Sometimes we go on a little sidetrack. So anyway, so no real hits off these records, right? So the 2 A&M albums, Equinox and Crystal Ball, very solid records, really good, but no hits off of them. That really didn't get much momentum. Crystal Ball, I think, is excellent, has great songs on it. But I think they felt like they were stalling after this huge hit with Lady. It kind of felt like they were stalling again. And I have a feeling maybe somebody at A&M, I'm speculating, said like, hey man, you guys we've put 2 albums, you gotta hit, like something's gotta happen here. So maybe they felt a little bit of pressure by this point. But the addition of Tommy Shaw was definitely a game changer for the band. Now they had 3 basically. I mean, I think John was too, but Tommy was even stronger as far as songwriting and everything. So they had 3 strong frontmen with JY, Dennis, and Tommy. So that brings us to 1977, right? So they have to make a new album, and that's kind of where we jump in. So the new album is called Grand Illusion, and man, they really stepped it up for this record.
Absolutely.
Would you agree?
Yes. And another thing about adding Tommy Shaw, Styx was never the most photogenic band. And they brought in this young, good-looking, blonde-haired guy, and the women loved him, and they still do. So Tommy Shaw brought a lot of women into the Styx fandom. And if you go on any Styx Facebook site, it's basically a lot of women that just love Tommy Shaw, love the band, and adore the music. So I think he was a great addition. And I remember back in the 80s when my mother used to watch soap operas, every month she would get a week, I don't even remember how often it came out, Soap Opera Digest. and I would flip through it. And I saw a picture when Tommy Shaw married a soap opera star. There was a picture of Tommy Shaw with his now ex-wife, and he was in Soap Opera Digest. He was such big news. And he was in the, he was on all the, like the teen magazines, the rock magazines. So he brought a different group of people into the band, which just widened their fan base.
Mm-hmm. Teen Beat.
Sorry to go off on a tangent.
No, it's okay. He was on the cover of Teen Beat or something, no, and he also apparently I read that he also was like they used to kind of stand there a lot. On stage he would run around and do the big poses and
yeah, he was younger than the other guys, had more energy, and he just loved it.
yeah. So I mean, good for him. He really brought something to the stage show as well. So he really was a big addition
Absolutely.
to the band. There's no question about it. And we're gonna touch on that even further when we start going through these albums. So Davey, I'm gonna hand it over to you at this point to jump into the first album we're gonna go through, which is Grand Illusion. So have at it.
It's their seventh studio album, and it was released on July 7th, 1977. So the stars just aligned. Seventh album, and nowadays you can't get big on your seventh album. You get one or two tries, and that's it. Back in the day, the record labels gave you time to gestate, to germinate, and to build a fan base and get bigger and bigger. And this is when they hit the zeitgeist back then with the Grand Illusion. It was their lucky 7 album. And this is when I first heard of the band. Tom, you grew up in New Jersey. I grew up and still live in New York, as if you can't tell by my accent, everyone. And this is when I had no older brothers or sisters. I just have a younger sister. And my friends and I were big into sports, and I used to listen to a lot of AM radio with my parents. And then somehow in 1977, I discovered the FM band. And I found these 2 rock stations where I liked the music, as we discussed earlier, WPLJ 95.5 out of Manhattan and WNEW FM 102.7. And I heard this song and it just hit me. And the song was Come Sail Away. That was the first Styx song I ever heard, and I fell in love with it. And it must have been at the end of 1977. And by that point, I had heard Fooling Yourself, The Angry Young Man, Tommy Shaw's big song from the album, on the radio. Mm-hmm. And I went out, I remember specifically buying with my own money for the first time Styx the Grand Illusion on vinyl and Billy Joel the Stranger on vinyl. So even though the Styx album came out in July, I think the Billy Joel album came out September or October. So I purchased it at the end of the year. And I have a late birthday, so maybe it was with my birthday money. I was a very young teenager buying my first rock albums, and those were my 2 first albums. So awesome. The Grand Illusion is where I came into the band.
That's two great choices right there.
Exactly, thank you. And I remember hearing on the radio if I remember correctly, definitely Come Sail Away, Fooling Yourself, The Angry Young Man. I'm just going to call it Fooling Yourself. Right. Of course, the title track, The Grand Illusion, and maybe Miss America. But that was all I remember. Do you remember hearing any other songs on rock radio?
No, I don't. And in fact, my first, you'll laugh at this, the first time I heard, I think it was, I want to say it was Grand Illusion, or maybe it was Come Sail Away. It was at Great Adventure. When we went to like Six Flags or whatever, and it was like,
in
that
Jersey.
Song, yeah, that song had just come out, and I was on this ride, and as soon as you got on the ride, there must have been some guy that was a big Styx fan that was running the roller coaster. As soon as you got on the roller coaster, you just cranked up Come Sail Away, especially the end, and it was like, oh, what is this? This is great, man. Like, this is awesome. It was the first time I heard it. And then I heard it on the radio, like you said, then I did hear it on NEW. Yeah. So.
And they got airplay all the time. And then I heard occasionally Lady, and I said, oh, that's the same band, which may have been the first power ballad technically, but we won't get into that. We'll be like Grant going on a real sidetrack if we get into that, getting into the weeds. Yeah. So it got a lot of airplay, and they were a big band back then. Mm-hmm. And eventually, a lot of the songs, because rock radio does this to Zeppelin, The Who, The Beatles, they just kill a lot of great songs. by overplaying them. So eventually I got tired of the so-called hits, and I got into the deep tracks. And probably definitely my two favorite songs on the album, Dennis DeYoung's Castle Walls, which I would say is a mini progressive rock masterpiece.
So good.
Great keyboard work and great tension in the build, and something that doesn't really get talked about a lot, the Styx rhythm section of twin brothers, John Panazzo on drums and Chuck Panazzo on bass. Panazzo, I've heard it pronounced both ways.
Yeah.
I think Dennis DeYoung usually says the Panazzo brothers.
Okay.
But the bass playing, especially, and the drumming on the earlier records is a little more adventurous. But when they got to the Grand Illusion and they got to the A&M albums, they sort of streamlined it more, and you heard a little less bass and more just not adventurous drumming, just straight drumming. Even though, of course, I'm going off on different directions here. Fooling Yourself is in so many different time signatures. The vocal parts, the chorus and the verses are in 4/4, but the instrumental parts are in like 7/8 and 7/6 and 5/8. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
But that's a real proggy song because of all the time signature changes and just the different sections, and of course the synth work of Dennis DeYoung. So Styx may not have been a huge prog band like Yes and the Great Six, you know, Jethro Tull, Pink Floyd, but I'd say they're prog adjacent, and their earliest stuff is more progressive. And as they moved later on in their career, they definitely got more streamlined, more commercial, more accessible. But I would say, as getting back to it, my two favorite songs, Castle Walls for the progginess, and it's just an eerie song. The keyboards, the bass at the beginning, the thumping bass, and just the breathing in and out that I guess is Dennis. It's a great song. And also the Tommy Shaw song, Man in the Wilderness, one of my favorite Styx songs.
Man.
Love that song. That is a great song. And have you heard the extended version?
No.
Grant didn't know about this either when we did a Tommy Shaw show on.
I have not heard that.
I forgot to say, I was on Grant's channel. We did a show on Tommy Shaw.
Yeah, how could we forget Grant? Grant's Rock Warehouse. Check it out.
Grant's Rock Warehouse. I was on there doing a Tommy Shaw show. Say that 3 times fast. I can barely say it once. And I mentioned that there was a greatest hits that came out in 2004 called Come Sail Away, the Anthology. And it has an extended version of Man in the Wilderness that has an extra minute, like a long outro. It's not a fade out. It's a much longer fade out. And you hear Tommy playing guitar, and he's just wailing on the vocals, just hitting some nice high notes.
Man.
And you could probably find it on YouTube. I told Grant, play it on YouTube. He said, I have to buy the CD. I'm buying the CD. But instead of a 6-minute, you have to hear it. Instead of a 6-minute version, it's a 7-minute version.
Cool.
And eventually they changed this collection, same title, A&M, instead of putting it out under Come Sail Away, the Anthology, they changed it to Styx Gold, I think it is. And it's a double CD set. They did that with a lot of their bands. Aerosmith, the same thing. I think it was called Oh Yeah, the Aerosmith Hits. And it was all 70s, 80s, and 90s stuff. And they changed that title and they just put it out under Aerosmith Gold. So that's where to find the extended version of Man in the Wilderness. And it's definitely worth hearing that extra minute. And this isn't a concept record, but it's a thematic album. It's all about what Dennis DeYoung and the other guys thought of America and the state of America. So it's not a real full concept album like Pink Floyd, The Wall. It's more of a thematic album like Dark Side of the Moon, where everything sort of melds together and it takes disparate parts and brings them together. And JY has a great song, Miss America, good hard rock song with a nice synth intro by Dennis. And I always thought it was odd that they never released because they released as singles from the album. I should go to my notes here for this. They released Come Sail Away, which reached number 8 on the charts. So it was the top 10 song. And then they released Fooling Yourself as the second single, which reached number 29. And I always thought it was odd that they never released Superstars, which is the shortest
Right.
song on the record, not including the finale, the grand finale, the 2-minute ending,
Right.
which is a 4-minute song. I thought it would have made a great single.
Hmm.
So I'm surprised A&M didn't do that, but I think they said, get into the studio. You've done well. Give us another album. And this album also peaked at number 6. And as of now, it's 3 times platinum. But I'm guessing it hasn't been certified in a while because of the big fallout in the band. So I doubt they've certified anything in at least 2.5 decades. So my guess is it would be 5 million, at least in America, and more
Right.
worldwide. Although Styx were always bigger in America and Canada than they were overseas.
Yeah. 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 I think Americans were much more on board with Styx. Um, yeah. So yeah, it's great. I love it. I mean, Grand Illusion is again another one of them. Okay, oh, you got to show that. Come on.
I forgot to hold up the cover.
Yeah.
I found my CD. I have a gold CD of it. Just going to show it. And it has a little slip case. And like the original album, it contains a mini poster of the boys in the band.
Man, nothing says rock star more than that. A white suit. I
And
love that.
the CD is gold.
Yeah. Ooh. Check it out, people.
So I just wanted to show that.
Yes, I brought my vinyl. Um,
Nice.
Actually, it's funny. I bought this at Reckless in Chicago, Reckless Records. It's one of my favorite stores ever. And they do all the on occasion they'll do like little, the guys that work there will do like little, just to get your attention or whatever. And he puts um hot, 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 classic scorchers, exclamation point. Come sail away, grand illusion, fooling yourself, anthem rock for everyone from Chicago. Grand synths, cocaine, hot fashion.
Okay.
So, it's funny because these really hipster dudes that work there, they secretly love Styx, right? Um, so anyway, I'm gonna jump into Grand Illusion real quick, just to give my 2 cents on it. I also bought it pretty early on. I always give a plug to Scotty's in Summit, New Jersey. That's where it's still there. And that's where I went to buy my first albums. With same thing with like I would break the yard and get like money from my dad or whatever for doing chores, and I'd be like, I'm gonna go buy an album. And this was one of the early records I bought was Grand Illusion because I had heard just like you, I had heard Come Sail Away, and I was like, I was sold. And then man, you listen to the whole album and it was like, what a treat. I mean, the whole thing is amazing. Um, I mean, so I made some notes on every song. I'm just gonna go through it really quick. So, and you could feel free to jump in at any time.
Okay.
So, so Grand Illusion, I said, what a way to start the record. Comes in with a bang. Huge chords with majestic energy. Certainly feels prog to me. I mean, this is probably their most prog that they got was this album. Um, you know,
This or Equinox.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean it's definitely it's got prog elements. I mean, like you said, I wouldn't say it's like it's not Tales from Topographic Oceans, but it's got a lot of prog elements. Um, I have great amalgamation of melodic rock mixed with prog elements. Great dramatic intro. I mean, all of these songs, like you said, all of these songs have these multiple parts to them, which is on this record especially. Just like always, huge intros on a lot of songs, which is I love. Um, and then he's talking about don't be fooled by the radio, TV, we're all the same, basically. It's a great message. Deep inside, we're all the same. It kind of saying like, hey, I was just like you not long ago. I made it big, but I was sitting in the audience just like you not too long ago. Um,
Just just like the lyrics in Superstars.
yeah, exactly. Same kind of theme, right? Um, so and then an amazing JY guitar solo. When they do that, all the same, same, it's like that is just such a cool part. Um, and then fooling yourself. I mean, we talked about this. I have best yes song that never was question mark. I mean, because really the beginning of that song is like, it could be, you could say, hey, this is a Yes tune, and people be like, oh, really? Because it sounds a lot like Rick Wakeman playing.
Good
With
point.
that synth riff, Um, and then when it goes down to the, the guitar acoustic by itself, and they relax, easy,
Take
and
it easy.
it's like how cool, it just comes right down. It's such a great song. I mean, what an amazing track. I have Tommy Shaw Heaven.
And
And
he wrote that song. He thought he was writing it about Dennis DeYoung because
Mhm.
Dennis took the band so seriously. And like you said, they had the hit. Lady became a hit. They signed with A&M. They put out two records that didn't do very well, that didn't do amazingly well. They had some singles in the 30s and 40s like Light Up and Mademoiselle from those albums, but they weren't top 20 hits or anything. And Dennis DeYoung was very frustrated. And he used to say he and John Panazzo, the drummer, would get together after the shows, and Dennis would say to John, "We're always the bridesmaid. We're never the bride. When are we going to hit it big? We're the opening act. The other bands don't treat us that well. And I know that we have the talent and we should be a big band. Why aren't we a bigger band?" And
Mhm.
Tommy Shaw saw this, and when he wrote the song "Fooling Yourself," he wrote it about Dennis, the angry young man. He meant Dennis at the time, and then he said decades later he realized he was more writing about himself.
Yeah, it's interesting. You see the world through your cynical world or whatever, but your future,
Cynical eyes.
your cynical eyes, your future looks quite bright to me. Yeah, definitely. It's you could tell, you could definitely, for sure. You're right. It's got to be. And I think maybe because he was always the cheerleader, right? Dennis was always the "we're gonna make it" guy, and I think by this point he was starting to get tired and wanted to. He's like, I want to make it now. Come on, let's go.
He was always the big idea guy. He always
Mhm.
was always the visionary of the band
Yeah,
and
yeah.
came up with these concepts and themes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's ultimately what started to, that's later in the story, but started to go like this. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so Superstars, I have another banger, three epics in a row. Love the super high harmonies in the chorus. Superstar. I mean, it's like it's just
It's
so cool.
JY.
Is it?
Back then, a lot of that is JY. Yeah.
Oh, cool,
The great
cool.
thing about Styx are their vocal harmonies, the way the three voices blended so well together, but you could always hear each guy distinctly.
Yes.
Hey, there's JY, there's Dennis, there's Tommy. You always heard them. And the triad of vocal harmonies in this band, basically on par with Queen, in my opinion, whom
Oh,
I
it's
also love.
sort of Queen-like. I was just gonna say that, kind of Queen-like.
And I think both bands, Styx and Queen, very influenced, although you never hear them saying it. Uriah Heep was one of the
Yeah.
first bands where all five members sang, basically. And they did
Hmm.
these five-part vocal harmonies and just vocals from all over, with
Hmm.
David Byron leading the charge. And I think with the Hammond organ that Dennis played on the early records and just the vocal harmonies, they took a lot from Uriah Heep, who I think
Right.
were the first ones to do it.
Yeah.
Unless you want to go back to the Beatles and the Beach Boys, but then I'm really getting off track.
Yeah. So so yeah, so I have, and I love the Carnival Barker in the ending seg, yes, yes, superstar. The Dennis does a lot of that, and he does it really well. And
Yeah,
that's
the
what
theatricality.
exactly the theater part starts coming in, but it's still mixed with that rock power, so it still has that, it's, I love it. And this song was, I looked at it again. It's a co-write with JY, Tommy, and Dennis, which is kind of rare. The three of them co-wrote it. Um, so "Come Sail Away," what can be said? Like you said, it's almost to the point where it's like, so you've heard it so many times, but it still affects me. I mean, you still listen to it, and if you turn it up, it still gets you every time when it kind of goes down to that breakdown with the big guitar chords at the end.
It's a
You know
powerful song. I mean, Eric Cartman loves it from South Park. So,
exactly. Come on, and it's funny because it's supposed to be like a joke or whatever, but I'm thinking those guys like that song.
oh, they were huge Styx fans because Dennis spoke about it. He said he was contacted by them and he said, "Oh, they're making fun of my song." And they said, "No, no, we're big fans. We love you guys. We
Okay,
love Styx."
cool,
So he said,
cool.
"Okay." And he said that was the best decision he ever did, was agreeing to let that song out and to be used because it brought in new fans to the band.
Absolutely, it had to have. I mean, they probably got a huge boost from that. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's the rock power is undeniable at the end of this. I mean, I can't help. I play air guitar every time. Can't help it. I go back to being 14 again, and it's just the best. I mean, and it's just it gives you chills. That breakdown when it breaks down before the big chords. It's just that the and it's like holding there, and you're like, oh, here it comes. It's just it's a great song. So what a great way to, I mean, that side one is just impeccable, right? Just awesome.
Yes.
Then we go to side two, Miss America, one of the best JY songs there is, in my opinion.
Mhm.
I mean, he sings it so well. That elegant synth, you mentioned that elegant synth opening, and it's sort of kind of you're like lulled into this dee, 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 and you're like, oh, this is nice. And all of a sudden, ding 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 an arrow, and it just goes into
Bow,
that riff,
bow.
yeah. And you're like, oh my god, this is so cool. So what a great guitar solo. When you oh my god, I was listening to this the other, for this episode. I was like, oh my god, listen to that guitar solo is killer. Um, Man in the Wilderness you talked about. I mean, what a great Tommy Shaw song. A memorable lead riff and melody, cool lyrics. Sometimes I feel like a man in the wilderness. I mean, who doesn't relate to that at times? Um, a multi-part song,
Influence,
you know.
influenced by Kansas, by him. That Styx were touring with
Really?
Kansas, and he
Okay.
saw Kansas perform, and he was blown away.
Oh,
And the
interesting.
next
I
time
didn't know. All right.
and he had his acoustic guitar, and the song sort of just came out that he felt a little different, and he tied the fact that his brother was drafted into the Vietnam War. So when
Mhm.
he says that his lonely soldier off to war, he's talking about his brother going to Vietnam. So it's a very personal song for him. And it was basically influenced by Kansas, another great band whom I love.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's great.
Maybe a future album battle there. Hmm.
Could be.
Hmm.
That might be a good one. Like, what is it? Point of No Return versus Left Overture, maybe?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so Castle Walls. We're gonna stay focused. Castle Walls, you already talked about it. A slow burner melodic, great solo. The harmonies on Castle Walls, just like you said, those triad harmonies that go up and down and swoop around. Oh my god, amazing. Great song. And then Grand Finale is just kind of makes it this sort of epic album because it kind of does revisit Superstars and Grand Illusion and all. You kind of feel like you went on a ride. So what a great way to end the record. So I just, come on. Grand Illusion just unbelievable. So let's move on. Let's move on to album number 2, which is Pieces of Eight from 1978.
I have my Russian import CD, which couples the debut Styx album, oddly enough, with Pieces of Eight.
You're saying what a weird
A
combo.
very unusual pairing. That's
So
what I pulled out.
so I'm gonna throw it over to you, Davey, for this one. So go ahead with your Pieces of Eight take.
Okay, so their eighth album, entitled Pieces of Eight, came out September 78. So it's a little over a year since The Grand Illusion came out. And this was the first time that they headlined because of the success of The Grand Illusion, which reached number 6. This album also reached number 6, and it's also 3 times platinum, which I'm guessing is a lot higher because it hasn't been certified in decades. And this record's a little different because it contains 10 songs as compared to 8 songs on the previous record and 2 short instrumentals. So it's sort of similar to the last album because you have 8 songs and these 2 short interstitial pieces, we'll call them. And for this record, Dennis DeYoung had a bit of writer's block. So Tommy Shaw is more of the dominant personality on Pieces of Eight, where Dennis DeYoung was more dominant on The Grand Illusion. And the 3 singles from this album were all Tommy Shaw songs. On the American charts, the first single was Blue Collar Man, which reached number 21. The second single, Tommy Shaw penned Sing for the Day, which only reached number 41, which is surprising because it has such a sing-song catchy chorus. I can't believe it only reached number 41. I don't think maybe the label didn't promote it enough. And Renegade was the third single, which surprisingly for such a hard rock song reached number 16. So those were the 3 singles released from the record. And JY has a couple of really good songs on here. The opening track, Great White Hope, is a good JY opening tune. And it also has some Carnival Barker, as you said, vocals by Mr. Dennis DeYoung.
In this
Then
corner, wearing white.
From the City of the Big Shoulders, which is a nickname for Chicago that I've been using ever since I bought this album in 1978. Because this one I bought when it came out because I loved the previous record so much. And I started going back and buying the earlier records. I'm sure I got this when I had enough money because I was a paper boy. So I had money from my paper route. So I'm guessing if this came out in September, by October, the latest, I had this record on vinyl. I just don't have a memory of buying this like I did with the debut because it was the first quote unquote rock album I bought with my own money.
So you were waiting for this one. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I think I'm Okay is a really excellent, underrated Dennis DeYoung song. I love the church organ and the positivity. It's a very positive message. And I just think it's a great song lyrically, musically, the note he hits at the end. Yes, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Really, even higher than, much higher than I just
Crazy
did.
high. Yeah. Yeah.
Sing for the Day. It has great Dennis DeYoung keyboards. It's sort of like Fooling Yourself Part 2 in a way.
Yeah.
Because it's a Tommy Shaw song, but it has great keyboard work by Dennis DeYoung. So back in the mid to late 70s, these guys were really working well together in tandem as a team. The whole band was. They were pulling together to make the band bigger and to become superstars, so to speak. Love this song, Sing for the Day. The chorus might be a little too sing-songy, so maybe take slight points off of that, but it's a very catchy song. Then you get the instrumental, The Message by Dennis, which is just the synth intro into the song. And I always have to look at the title on this because the song is Lords of the Ring as opposed to the movie and the novel Lord of the Rings. And I think they did this on purpose so they wouldn't get sued by J.R.R. Tolkien's estate. So it's Lords of the Ring, and it's a pretty good hard rocking song that actually Dennis DeYoung wrote it, but the vocals are by James Young. And occasionally this did happen on Styx records where someone wrote it and another guy sang it, but usually the songwriter sang their own songs. But I like this song. It's got a really good solo section and the whole that's a great part of the song. That's the proggy part of this song, Lords of the Ring. And then on side 2, you get the huge Tommy Shaw songs, Blue Collar Man, Long Nights, and Renegade. So everyone knows those songs. I'm not going to talk about them. But Queen of Spades, sandwiched right in the middle, written by James Young and Dennis DeYoung, definitely a top 10 Styx song in my book. Love Queen of Spades. It's got definitely proggy because it starts out mellow, it builds up, and then the outro is that mellow intro. But it's a great solo by JY, great lyrics. And, you know, unfortunately, with the whole animosity between Dennis DeYoung versus James Young and Tommy Shaw, a lot of bad blood there. And they always said, oh, he was Barry Manilow. He wrote all these ballads. He wrote rock songs. You can go back to the early Wooden Nickel days. And he's a rocker. He just happens to have a big range, and he writes rock songs. He writes ballads. But anyone, you know, they sort of try to paint him as a balladeer. And yes, he writes ballads, but he writes rock songs. And his performance, his vocal on Queen of Spades is great. It's friggin' great. He's a rock artist. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
Another great song that he wrote, Pieces of Eight, the title track, with a great Prog middle section on it. And I like, it's a piano ballad, but then it builds into a great progressive, even a Pomp Rock song. Styx, I guess, were one of the first bands that were called Pomp Rock, P-O-M-P, Pomp Rock. And I guess it stands for pompous, and it's supposed to be an insult, but it's just that their songs, they have power chords, they rock, and they're hooky. They have catchy choruses. You could sing along. So if Pomp Rock is a bad thing, I'd like more of Pomp Rock, please. because I think it's a good thing. And Pieces of Eight is another great underrated Styx song.
Mhm.
So I really like the Dennis stuff on this album, even though he's not the lead on the album, because unfortunately, rock radio to me burned out the big Tommy Shaw songs, the two big hits.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's my review of this album. The great Dennis DeYoung deep tracks on here, and Queen of Spades co-written by James Young.
All right. Very good. Love it. And I'm with you. This album, I mean, Great White Hope starts it out, and I love that. I mean, that to me is like, Miss America is amazing. This is like Miss America Part 2 almost, where it's just just moving to boxing. And I love it. I have my notes lives up to Miss America, which is I love Miss America. So I mean, this is a great another great JY installment. And he sings it just I love the look at me. He's like kind of unhinged. I just love those vocals. Um, okay, I'm okay. This is where I kind of differ a little bit from you. I think it's okay. I have I'm okay. It's okay. That's what I had. So it starts out pretty cool. I like the rhythmic vibe and the drums and the bass. Like you said, very underrated rhythm section in this band. Agreed with you. And I do like the sort of bouncy drums and bass and I actually like the verse quite a bit, but the chorus kind of for some reason sort of lets me down a little bit. The whole "I'm okay" and it keeps going and it goes on a little bit too long, in my opinion. And it's moving a little bit more towards the poppy Dennis DeYoung, just a little bit. Um, I think he was thinking people were going to take out the crowd. I'm okay. But I don't think it's a bad song. I just don't love it. I don't love it. Sing for the Day. I have a good little ditty from Tommy. Sticks in, like you said, it sticks in your head. That's for some reason after I listen to this album, it's always the din, 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 din. It just sticks in your head. Um, so it's a good acoustic song, but it doesn't really blow me away. It's not like Angry Young Man. Um, it's good. I like it. But it's not to the level of like a Angry Young Man. Lords of the Ring, as you said. I have Here We Go. This is much better. Back to the epic Styx, which is what I want. Great song. So I love Lords of the Ring a lot. I just love the whole to the magic. It's got that big majestic thing I love.
The
Um,
Pomp Rock.
yeah, pomp, exactly. Bring on the pomp. Bring it on. I love it. Because this band does it so well. I mean, if you're gonna do it to the 10, take it to
Precisely.
10, right? Blue Collar Man, I have Tommy Shaw bringing his A game on this, as you said. He really brought a lot of great songs to this album. Blue Collar Man is amazing. Like you said, it's played out. Of course, I agree with you. It's played out, but still a great song. And what a great way to kick off side two. And it's apparently about a guy that got laid off from General Motors, which, I'm in Michigan, so it kind of hits close to home. Um, Queen of Spades, as you mentioned, awesome. Another epic sounding track from Dennis and JY. Another co-write. They work very well together. So it makes me very sad when they don't get along anymore. They don't. I mean, they were so good. It's like Pink Floyd. It's like Waters and Gilmore. Like you guys are so good together. Like come on. And it's like same thing with JY and Tommy and Dennis. It's like you guys are just magic together.
But it's about money and egos, basically. I always thought in most bands, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah,
You
unfortunately.
have people whispering in your ear, you're the star, you're the star. Go out
Yeah.
on your own. You don't need these guys.
Yeah. Well,
A lot of it comes down to that.
I think as soon as JY and Tommy realized they could sell tickets without Dennis, they're like, okay. It's
Because
like,
Dennis, he never liked to tour. He's not a big touring guy. And the other guys are just road dogs, as they themselves say.
right.
And nowadays, that's how you make your money. You don't sell records. You don't make money selling CDs and albums. The money is on the road and in the merchandise. Just look at your shirt. That's
Yeah.
where they make their money, on the merch.
Yeah. And
Tour
unlike you
books, shirts.
and unlike you and me, people don't care who's in the band anymore.
A lot of
Actually
casual
care.
fans, a lot of casual fans just go to hear the hits and they don't realize it might be a different singer depending on the band,
Right.
whether it's Foreigner, Journey, Styx, REO Speed, any of these older bands
They
who
just see
might
the
not even
they
have
see the
any
logo.
originals.
They look, the logo's there, man.
That's why Roger Waters never did as well solo as Pink Floyd did without Roger Waters. You have the name, you have the brand, you have the logo. That's where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd say a lot of Floyd fans don't know the individual names of any of the band members, and a lot of them don't even know who Sid Barrett was.
No, I agreed. And I always tell my daughters, they laugh at me, but I always tell them, I'm like, don't be a poser. I'm like, if you're gonna wear the shirt, you better know the band members, the albums. I mean, don't be a poser.
Yeah, like if you went up to one of the Kardashians wearing a Metallica shirt, name 3 Metallica albums or songs, and they won't be able to.
They'd be like,
That's a poser.
I don't know, I just like the shirt.
It just looks good.
Yeah. So anyway, so back to Pieces of Eight. So Renegade, again, another one, like you said, sort of played out. It was a huge hit. Another great Tommy Shaw song, though. I mean, it started as an acoustic, apparently CSN type, that whole "Oh Mama." I guess the whole song was sort of like that. And I guess Dennis said, "Let's rock this
He's the
up."
one. Yep.
Yeah, let's make it bouncier and rock it up. And thank God he did, because it's wow, it's so good.
But yet he's the Barry Manilow of the band. He's the
Right,
big
exactly.
balladeer.
There's a perfect example. There you go. Proving your point. So what a song. A plus is what I have. Pieces of Eight, another great Dennis track. Starts with a solo piano, as you said, slowly builds to this huge chorus. Um, Maybe possibly the most proggy song on the record. He's going for an epic here, and he succeeds. And Pieces of Eight is great. It's a great song. And then there, like you said, there's this aku thing at the end, which is like I don't really count. I'm not counting these little tiny little instrumentals. It's kind of weird that they listed them. It's like, especially the message is like a minute.
Yeah, minute 6 seconds, I think.
It's like, what? They listed this as yeah, so it's a little odd, but so anyway, so that's my Pieces of Eight. That's my Pieces of Eight review. So we're gonna move this thing along. So we're talking. This is great. I mean, it's really fun, but we can go on forever. As most of my guests, when I talk about these albums, we can talk about them all night. So we have to get to a conclusion. So, so I'm gonna throw it over to you again for your take on which one, if you had to pick, where are you going with it?
Okay. I did neglect to mention Dennis DeYoung's organ playing on Blue Collar Man is really good. It's what starts the song.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Forgot to say that.
yeah.
It's a really catchy, good organ line.
Oh yeah.
Influenced probably by Ken Hensley from Uriah Heep, John Lord from Deep Purple. When I met Dennis DeYoung, I've seen Styx going back to 1980. I caught them on the Paradise Theater tour. And I've seen them tour every studio record since, except Crash of the Crown. I did not see them on the most recent tour, but I've seen them dozens of times. They're one of my most seen bands live. And I did get to meet the band on the Edge of the Century tour, backstage at the Beacon. Actually, it wasn't even at the Beacon. It was next door. I think it was in the basement of the Cat Club or something. But I met Dennis DeYoung and I said, "Who's your favorite keyboard player?" I had a Yes shirt on. And I said, "Is it this guy?" And I had a jacket on. I remember doing this to Dennis. And he said, "Wakeman's good, but Emerson's the man." So he's a big Keith Emerson.
Oh, that's
fan.
cool. That's really cool. Yeah.
So he did say that to me, because I remember I had an unusual Yes shirt on. And I said, "Is it this guy?" And I think I had my denim jacket on. And he said, "I like Wakeman. He's good, but Emerson's the man."
That's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah.
So I think he was influenced by Emerson, Wakeman, Lord, and Ken Hensley from Uriah Heep, who never seems to get any credit. Great band.
No one ever talks about him. Yeah.
Just Mr. Pete Pardo on Sea of Tranquility.
Right.
Big
Right.
fan.
But John, you're right. You're right though. I do hear a lot of Deep Purple-ish kind of stuff on that Hammond.
So I'm going to have to go. They always say that you remember your first love. And I'm going to have to go. My winner has to be The Grand Illusion, which is not to denigrate Pieces of Eight. It's also a great record. It's just, if Grand Illusion is, let's say, a 9.75, almost a perfect album, I would say that Pieces of Eight is a 9.5. It's
Mhm.
very close.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. It's a tough
And
one.
anyone who picks Pieces of Eight as their favorite Styx album, I have no problem with it. No one's right, no one's wrong. It's all a matter of personal choice, but I just personally prefer the Grand Illusion, but Pieces of Eight is still an awesome record.
Pieces of Eight. What are you, an idiot? No, it's not like that. It's no, I'm with you. This is just like the Genesis one I just did, where it's like, I mean, Trick of the Tail, Wind and Wuthering, it's like flip a coin, and it's very, and that's like what I'm doing with these is I'm trying to make it difficult so that it becomes more of a discussion. You really have to think about it. But this one, I honestly I didn't have to think that much on this one. I gotta go. I'm with you. I gotta go with Grand Illusion. Same here. It was
Good choice.
My first Styx album as well. So you're right. You never forget it, and it had more of an impact because of that. Um, but I really truly think that this is just 8 songs of just brilliance. I mean, this is just their shining hour. It just I don't know, and I do think there's some amazing highlights on this. Don't get me wrong. There's some great songs on this, and like you said, if someone said Pieces of Eight, I'd say great. I can't argue. Cannot argue with that. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah. So I mean, just 2 amazing records from a great band, great Midwestern band.
Hmm.
And are they prog? There's always this whole are Styx prog? Are they not prog? Are they prog? Are they not? I mean, and they, as we talked about, we could talk about this all night again. It's like as they went, they got poppier and poppier as like, right. I mean, it's Cornerstone. I listened to Cornerstone just out of curiosity. I haven't listened to it in forever, and it's like Cornerstone. It's got like the edges are kind of sanded off, like the production. I don't know what it is about that album. It feels a lot lighter.
I'd say it is, but there are still great songs on there. My two favorites from that album, the Tommy Shaw Bookends, Lights, the
Lights, yeah,
first song, and Love in the Midnight, the last song. Those are my
yeah,
two favorites on that album.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
really like Borrowed Time, except the one thing that's driven me crazy for 40 plus years now, that yes, no thing.
yeah, yeah. It's a little
Just,
cheesy.
yeah, take that out. I never liked that. That always alienated me. Points
Yes,
off for that.
no, yeah. It's like, really? This is the best arrangement you guys could think of?
That's
Um,
why sometimes you need an outside producer to be there and say, no, that's not a good idea. Drop that.
right, right.
Or try that again. Rework that part. See,
Yeah.
both these albums somehow they're great, and they were both produced, I neglected to say, by the band.
Hmm.
Grand Illusion, Pieces of Eight, both produced by Styx, all 5 guys in the band. I'm
Hmm.
guessing Dennis had a bigger hand on Grand Illusion. Maybe Tommy and JY had a bigger hand on Pieces of Eight,
Hmm.
but they self-produce themselves, and those are their biggest albums. They're
Yeah, I was noticing
best,
that too. I was like, wow, there's really not a producer on these albums, which is crazy.
right?
So really, it's pretty cool that they were able to do that and kind of edit themselves, I guess.
But I
But
think they may have needed one
as
going
it
on
went, yeah,
after.
as it went, and yeah, because Cornerstone, I agree with you. I love Lights. Lights is a great track, and so is, yeah, man, and so is the last track as well. So I agree with you. That's a great call on Cornerstone. But I'm listening to it. I'm going, even the ones that are trying to rock just don't rock as much. They just don't.
But if you listen to, let's say, Edge of the Century, which Dennis produced, that's even more poppy and more mellow and tranquil than Cornerstone.
Right,
Say
right.
Cornerstone rocks more than Edge of the Century, for example.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. But then it went on to, what was the next album? Paradise Theater, and then that has some moments on it. And I'm sure that was a good,
Snowblind.
I'm sure that was a good show too. The live. I'm sure they did those songs live. They rocked even harder. Because I really do like "Rockin' the Paradise." That's a cool track.
And I'm a big Snowblind fan.
Snowblind, yeah, exactly right. So, so anyway, we we got to wrap this up. Like I said, we can.
I know.
It's a disease. We could talk music forever.
Because we're nerds. That's why we care who's in the band more than a lot of other people.
Yes, yes, we actually care, people. We care. Um,
Foreigner, they're touring with no original members in the band. Is
Yeah.
that right? Is that wrong?
Yeah. It's again, you're going to see the logo, but it's like it's a cover, it's basically a tribute band. Um, so but people are like, Hot Blooded, I love it, Hot Blooded, yeah. So but anyway, so I'm gonna say that we both went for Grand Illusion tonight. Please comment on this video. Tell me what you guys think. Do you think we're crazy? Do you think Pieces of Eight is much better? Do you think, you tell us. These are two great records, but you tell us which one you think is your favorite. Um, as always, please like and subscribe. Thanks for hanging with us for this long, by the way. If you're still watching, you're a diehard as well. And thank you again to Davey Cretin for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me.
His analysis was spot on, and I really enjoyed it. So I always forget to say you got to like and subscribe, right? So if you like what you see, you got to hit the like button and you got to subscribe as well. So so I appreciate if you would do that as well. So thanks again. Thanks, Davey. And good night, everybody. Take care.